I don't think it's ridiculous to assume we're looking for other planets because this one will end.
If you'd be so kind, would you mind introducing yourself for the Dreams of Consciousness podcast?
Sure. I am Stephen Barton from the band Close the Hatch.
And where is your band based?
We're based out of Dayton, Ohio.
And how would you describe your music?
I guess a doom sludge band, but a little more on the melodic end.
With a lot of atmosphere and would you say like even a post rock kind of influence?
Definitely, yeah, that would be a pretty apt analysis. Yeah. Between that, somewhere between the post rock and post metal thing, and with elements of doom stuff.
Tell me a little bit about the history, when you guys formed and what brought you together.
Well, we started at the tail end of 2011. It was a somewhat different group of guys at the time, coming out of another band. It was just kind of going in a more radio friendly direction, which is fine, but we just made the decision, two of the guys in that band made the decision, to myself and another fellow, to kind of do something different that was a little more experimental than what we were doing. So that's kind of what led to it. And then kind of over the years, we've been a band for, going on 9 years now. So it's changed more and more over time, at times becoming more of an aggressive thing. This most recent record, Modern Witchcraft, is actually kind of leaning more towards being a little more atmospheric and melodic than the prior records, and there's no screaming on it, whereas all the records previous to this had screaming on them.
Let's talk about the style and the style you guys were playing originally. Well, first of all, how did you land on that style? What led you to that very heavy but also post-rock influenced style that you had on your first?
Well, I kind of always listened to like bands like Neurosis and Godflesh, and myself and one of the other guys that was in the band at the time were listening to this band called the Ocean Collective and things of the sort at the time, and the band Isis, and we just kind of wanted to do some sort of thing that was similar to that, but also kind of adding in more shoegaze and post rock drony stuff as well. So it was just kind of trying to find a happy medium between the two things.
Now, as you mentioned, your style developed over the years, over the course of several releases.
Mm-hmm.
Was this a conscious decision, or did your style just naturally develop that way?
I'd say with the first few releases, it was more a conscious effort to do something different than the prior band that we were a part of. And I'd say over time, it kind of was just kind of like, how can we do the thing we're doing and expand upon it. And with the last two releases, I think we really, because prior to all these records, without getting too much into it, a lot of the concepts for the songs were written just myself on the computer, and then I would bring them to the band for recording and rehearsal to kind of expand on those ideas. And it really wasn't until the record prior to this one, the record 6, we started actually working on the songs more as a group, and we would bring the ideas in just as riffs and record them into the studio, since one of the members of the band owns a studio. So we would record things in sections and then actually just try every idea possible until something worked or that sounded cool to us. So that was, I think, the real first time that we made a conscious effort to go in a direction per se. But this recent record, somewhere at the beginning of about 2 years ago, when we started writing the songs and demoing them as a group, we kind of just made the decision to maybe try to do things a little more standard structure, as far as like, radio rock structure. I don't know that necessarily anything on the record is still radio rock or anything, but more simplified structures, and to get away from screaming entirely and focus more on having some melody and scream and singing versus screaming.
Why the impulse to get away from the screaming?
I don't know. I've been doing it for almost 8 years, and it kind of started to feel like a bit of a crutch to some degree. That the thing was with screaming, at least in this band, and where I think it actually kind of lends itself to other bands, is that the music can kind of be chaotic at times and not really have a defined direction melodically or anything that actually like follows a path per se. like with a melody or a key in particular, you can scream in any key. It doesn't really matter. I think that I had kind of gotten to a point where I wanted to do something that was more of a challenge to me, first of all, but also just kind of got us in a different direction entirely. And I think the way we're kind of looking at it now is that if it feels right and it goes well this way, then maybe that's an opportunity for us to explore something different, since we've been a band, going on 9 years now. So it might be fun to go another direction. So if this is something that spurs us into a different thing, then this is just the beginning of that. And we may fall back on the screaming thing, who knows? But it just was kind of like, I want to try to work within melody and keys and things of that nature and stuff that we really haven't done in the past. So that's really the main reason, just trying something new.
So your band has been extremely prolific. I think this latest album is your sixth album. Is that correct?
It's our seventh release.
Your seventh album.
Yeah.
What is your songwriting process like, and how are you able to generate songs so quickly?
We kind of early on, because the prior band we were banned for 6 years and only put out 2 records, that we kind of made a conscious decision we're going to try to release at least one thing a year. Whether anyone listens to it or not is who knows. But the idea was like, we're going to at least put out an EP a year. So we've released a lot of stuff, but it's been in short, groups of songs. So 4 songs or 6 songs on average once a year. But the truth of it is we usually end up with probably 10 or more songs for each of those. And then they get dwindled down to the ones that seem to be the most fitting of whatever group of material we're going with. I know on a couple of the records, we've even spent money in the studio and recorded pretty much an entire, another record on top of the things we were recording, and scrapped a good portion of it. So the songwriting process is kind of, at least what makes it go quickly, is that I'm kind of a multi-instrumentalist, and a couple of the other guys in the band are too. So if there's an idea for a song, before they even make it to the point where we're all in a room together, more often than not, I'm able to kind of flesh out the song enough to where there's drums, or at least the basic idea of them, bass, guitars, everything is kind of there, at least the basic idea of what I would hope to accomplish, or some sort of thing that would lean in the direction that I was heading in my head. But sometimes that changes once you get in a room with people. But that's the reason I think we've been able to do it so quickly, is because it's just I'm around recording equipment very regularly, and the other guitarist, Sean, works in a studio and owns a studio, so he's constantly in front of a recording system. So anytime there's an idea, things just kind of get tracked, and when we're able to be in a situation to start recording a record, we have a lot of material to pick from.
So are the songs more or less complete when they are brought to the band?
For the most part, yeah. And if they're not, they're at least broken down into 1 or 2 parts, and then anything in addition to that is written as a group in order to make those things fit better, or transitions between parts, whatever we can do to make something feel less musical and not just kind of built together in a cookie cutter fashion. So if something's simple, then we usually spend a lot of time on it, making it seem more cohesive. If it's something that's pretty much done from the beginning, sometimes we just re-record things with the other people playing their version of whatever the idea was.
And you mentioned scrapping material that doesn't fit with feeling of EP release. What happens to all the material that you don't use?
Some of it lives on a hard drive in purgatory, and some of it we've actually released just at like 1 or 2 songs at a time. Or we'll usually, when we do physical versions of records, particularly with CDs, some of those other songs will be added to the physical product as bonus material that isn't on the digital download, or vice versa. So sometimes there's a digital version of that material and it's never put on physical product. So we try to release stuff that, at least stuff that seems complete, we'll release it to some degree. Or if we have, like in this instance, with this recording between here and the last recording, there was a 2-year gap. So we did release one song that was from an older recording session on Bandcamp, just to put something out. So it wasn't like we weren't doing anything. So yeah, I mean, it all gets used to some degree, but the stuff that isn't used is usually just not there yet. But that's not to say that it couldn't be used down the road. But we kind of tend to just keep moving forward and not really go back to any of that stuff. I know as of late, I've been using a lot of that stuff for background music and like YouTube videos and stuff that I'm doing for something completely different. So it ends up just kind of being the music bed behind, somebody explaining how to use, part of a piece of software or something.
That's actually a fascinating field. I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit later, but I don't know if people realize that there are professional musicians coming up with all the background music for these explainer videos and just random things on the internet. I did a fair amount of social media marketing and videos for companies, and so we were always scrambling to find royalty-free music that that we use for our marketing material.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing. I got into it. A friend of mine was working for a school that was teaching people cosmetology and makeup and things of that nature, and she knew that I had built up over the years, even since I very first started recording, I've saved up a bunch of stuff that's just ideas, and some of it, particularly once the computer stuff came into play, some of it's pretty much complete ideas in various genres. So that's kind of what made me get into it, is that she kind of reached out to me and asked if I had anything she could use, and I just kind of sent her 10 or so songs, and she picked a few to use for this series of makeup tutorials. And then and I started doing a YouTube page for kind of my own interest and to kill time about different types of guitar pedals and software for recording and stuff, and just found a use for it. But yeah, there's definitely, there's a lot of services out there that offer that stuff, but I don't know how much of it's free because I really haven't gotten into that. But I am, I guess, lucky in that if I feel like I need something just as a piece of background music, I can pretty quickly scribble it together just to be underneath somebody doing something else.
So we already discussed some aspects of the writing of the album, and you talked about how it's a little bit of a departure from your previous work. Modern Witchcraft is the name of the album. Tell me a little bit about the recording of this album.
Well, we started demoing the songs about 2 years ago. And then, like I said previously, at some point throughout the demoing and rehearsing process for some of those ideas, we decided to kind of steer things in a more melodic and singing direction. And so that's what we ended up doing.
And this album was recorded with Micah Carley from Hawthorne Heights.
Correct.
How did he get involved with this?
We've actually done 3 full records with him now. We started working with him, I want to say in 2015. He worked on a record with us and worked with him on 2 other releases since then. And I grew up with Matt Ridenauer and Casey Calvert, who are both in Hawthorne Heights. Casey obviously has passed. And Micah, I knew him through that group of people. And then when we started to look for studios to record the record, I want to say it was the record that's called Green. We looked for studios that were close by because we had recorded everything previous to that in our own studios. And we just kind of wanted to have our hands off of the recording and engineering process and just be able to play and focus more on that. So we went to kind of Google and just see what we could find, and we stumbled upon a studio in Troy, Ohio, and it happened to be owned by Micah. So that worked out because we already had a previous existing relationship with him, and then that's kind of it. And he's kind of been the unsaid 5th member of the band off and on, because in certain instances he's really helped us to develop certain approaches, and especially the more aggressive records. We kind of went nuts with different pieces of gear and stuff he had there to really make things a little more more stoner metal vibe, but kind of with his input and capturing those sounds. And it was really with his influence to kind of go all in on some of that stuff. Yeah, I'd say that's about the connection there with him.
So does he give a lot of feedback on the songs themselves?
Yes and no. I think early on, more so no, but as we got to be more comfortable in recording sessions with him, we kind of just let him take on more of a production role. Previous records, this record, I only spent 1 full day of doing overdubs of guitar and bass stuff with him. The rest of the record was recorded in our studio in an Encore recording in Dayton, which my guitar player Sean owns. And to finish out the record, Micah did all of the mixing and mastering. But yeah, this one was only one little bit of time with him as far as the actual tracking, and everything else was kind of done in-house. But prior records, he had done almost everything, with the exception of vocals, which I tend to do in my own studio just so I can be a little more attentive with, focus and not have distractions and things.
So, tell me about Red Moth Records.
That was created at the same time as the band by myself and one of the former members. So we started the thing with the intention of just being able to distribute everything ourselves. So we wanted to do everything we could to not have other people involved. And with the previous band we were in, we'd kind of been drugged through a bunch of different scenarios with record labels and production teams and A&R and stuff, and we just kind of took what we learned from that and applied it to our own thing. And it's since just kind of become under my control. So, and I could say we've been doing that for almost 11 years now. So we started it right towards the end of another band. But yeah, it's just our own thing, our own imprint. It kind of allows us some freedom there and the ability to, as a business, write off some of our recording and gear expenses and travel and things too. So it's dual purpose. We can release records and also cover some things business-wise.
Now, are you looking to release bands besides Close the Hatch? Or is it essentially just for Close the Hatch?
I did both at different times. There's been periods of time where I've done much more of releasing other people's music than my own. And I kind of got away from it more so because it was expensive, mostly. It's expensive to duplicate vinyl. It's expensive to duplicate, it's not as bad with CDs, but everything else involved, PR and all of that is expensive. And a lot of times what you want to happen is that the band that you're putting out a record for still stays gung-ho about promoting themselves and doing their own PR and booking tours and things, because that part of it really wasn't my end with being such a small label. So a lot of that just became, I'm putting a lot of money into a thing that's not necessarily giving money back, and not that that's always the case with things or that's always what I expect of it. But more often than not, I was spending a lot of money and not getting a lot out of it, or the bands at the time that we were working with weren't really getting out on the road as much. And that's, that was kind of the biggest issue. We had a couple acts that we worked with that did all of the right things and did really well. They sold out of all their records and things, and that's great. There's a band called Spirit in the Room that I put out 7-inch for, and those are all sold out. And there's a band called Shroud Eater. They did, 2 full tours on the record and a lot of PR and everything, and they sold out a record. So sometimes it would work to my advantage and things would go well, and then other times it would just kind of be me dumping money into something that's really not getting anyone anywhere. So it mostly, without sounding too negative about it, I just kind of got to a point where it's like, if I'm going to spend this much time and money and effort into something, I would rather just be on our own releases. But it's open. I mean, I've released stuff for other artists in the past year. So there's this electronic group called Death Cameras. I put out a split with them. So I mean, if something's cool and it comes my way, then yeah, I'll reach out. But the biggest benefit for me right now is digital stuff. So if somebody wants to release something and wants to have the record label attached to it, it's digitally or for CD, then I'm definitely all about that. But when it comes to vinyl, that's a several $1,000 investment, so it gets a little harder for me to do.
And how do you choose the artists that you release? Are they mostly friends?
Yeah, with the exception, I mean, they're all friends now, I guess. Shroud Eater was brought to me by another label who wanted to split the costs of duplication with them on a vinyl release. So that's how I got to know Jean and her band. And actually we ended up working with them later because Gene Says from Shroud Eater did a record cover for us for one of our records. So we kind of became friends. But yeah, most of the stuff, particularly early on, was bands locally that we were friends with, or the Close the Hatch as a band. There are multiple bands that were associated with it, so each member was doing something else in another band. So those releases would happen through the label as well. And it was more just kind of like, how can we keep all of this close-knit and build a thing? Originally, that was kind of the intention with the local acts, is that we're all playing the same places and working together anyhow, that we may as well try to release everything together. And that's what we did for a while. And there was another label in Dayton at the time that was doing something fairly similar. So we just kind of all tried to work together. They would that band would use my disc duplicators, or that label would use the disc duplicators for their bands and so on and so forth. And when it came time to do like some of the hand assembly of packaging and stuff, they would help us out. But that's no longer, that label is no longer a thing. So, but yeah, the whole idea was just like, how can we support the small community of artists we were around initially?
So now that the album is out, what do you have planned?
Well, we had a lot planned until the whole COVID thing happened. April, we were supposed to be on the road for a bit, and the record was actually supposed to come out at the beginning of April. And with the whole COVID thing happening, we kind of pushed it back. And with the PR team I'm working with, we wanted to put a little more time into promoting it properly and getting the press release out. So we pushed it back. But unfortunately, I don't really know what our plans are other than to continue to push the release right now and work to get the physical product available to people who are interested in it. And I think we may end up doing some live streams and things of that nature as far as performances go, because there's really no alternative to that as of yet. Live music is just barely starting to be a thing in Ohio again, as far as bars being able to have it. So that actually changed, I think, within the last 48 hours. So hopefully, as things progress, we can get back into the local end of playing, but it still looks like the national and international touring that we were, hoping to do in promotion for this record is probably going to be put on hold until next year or whenever, restrictions are lifted enough that we can do it freely.
So the album is called Modern Witchcraft. It's out now. What's the best way for people to order it?
You can go to closethehatch.com, which will take you directly to our Bandcamp account. That's the main thing I tend to steer people towards as far as purchasing the record digitally. And the physical product will be available there too once we get those in. So I would just say, follow the social media accounts, which is just at Close the Hatch on all the platforms, Instagram, Twitter, all that stuff. So Facebook, same thing. If you keep an eye on that, then there'll be information on the release date of the physical product. But otherwise, closehatch.com. And of course, there's iTunes and Prime Music and Apple Music, and Spotify is there if you just want to stream the record. All of the normal stuff that you would use to find a record as far as the digital versions of it go, that's all available, Tidal, all that stuff.
So what do you have planned for the physical release?
There'll be a CD sooner rather than later, so I would assume within the next month we'll have CD versions of the record that will probably have some additional material on it. But we're working on finishing that up remotely because we're all separated due to the virus. And so there'll be that, and then our hopes are that we can get it together enough or maybe find another label to work with to split the cost on putting out a vinyl before the end of the year. But a lot of the vinyl industry is delayed because of the virus, so that's down the road. But that is the plan. There'll be a CD soon within the next month, and then sometime before the end of the year, we hope to get a vinyl out. There'll at least be a vinyl before we are allowed to go tour again, because we want to make sure we have it with us when we go back out again.
And if people are looking for music to put in the background of their videos, how can they find your music?
Honestly, if someone wants to email me, Stephen, Stephen, at redmothrecords.com, just, put in the subject line that you're looking for music bed material, and just let me know what it is you're looking for, and I may have some of it available. If not, then I'll work something out with you that I can just get you a quick something. If you need just like 30 seconds of a clip of some sort of genre or something, I'd be happy to do it, just because it helps me with, staying on top of creative stuff, and I enjoy doing it. So if it's something you're interested in, just email me and we'll work something out.
Is there anything else you want to say?
No, I appreciate you having me on and speaking to me. Sorry, these are long-winded answers.
We like long-winded answers. I think what I've discovered is that the listeners prefer the guests talking more than they like me talking. So feel free to expound on any subject that you may be interested in.
Gotcha. Well, that's good. I always feel like I'm talking too much. So hopefully there's enough there, and it doesn't seem like I'm, going on a tangent too much. But yeah, there's there's all kinds of stuff, and you know, I could expound upon with it. But I suppose even at that, if somebody has more questions or whatever, then you know, feel free to reach out to me through the band pages or anything, and I'd be happy to answer further question.
Thank you so much, Stephen.
No problem. Thank you.